listening to the podcast Coffee with Mike and Julie, Libertarians Talk Psychology. This is current commentary from an MBA businessman and a PhD psychologist.
Look what they done to my song.
Today I want to talk about my concerns about the hostility toward Elon Musk and Tesla is getting so serious that I'm just worried, worried for him, and I'm worried for these Looney Tunes that are decided violence against the cars and the dealerships. That stuff can really escalate. So I wanted to talk about the underlying psychology of the Trump derangement syndrome and now the Elon Musk derangement syndrome.
And I just want to emphasize that this is not a minor thing. This stuff has gotten violent to the point of risking death several times over based on political ideology.
People that are willing to cheat to key a car under the right conditions, they'll be willing to cheat in another way. Criminal behavior is cheating. It's taking power that you don't have a right to.
We've had 2 assassination attempts against Trump. You talk about Trump derangement.
Yeah.
We've had 2 attempts after years of all this lawfare stuff.
Yeah.
It's just a fine line between people being deranged and it being spilling over into actual, let's kill the guy.
It used to be a term, criminally insane. That was a real thing. Criminals are insane because criminal behavior is so antisocial. Murderers are insane.
Wow.
In my view. I always have been. So I want to talk about the origins of this, and the basic psychological phenomena is called projective identification, but I thought we'd start with this really excellent review by Academy of Ideas. The title is Carl Jung, The Shadow and the Dangers of Psychological Projection. So I'll play a little bit of it, and then we can stop and kind of orient on what we want to talk about. But I'm going to play the rest of it because it's such a good review. And if people want to see it, they have a lot of good art that goes with it on YouTube.
Yeah.
We are going to explore the phenomenon of projection by looking at the dangers it poses to the well-being of both the individual and society at large. Projection occurs when we attribute an element of our personality, which resides in our unconscious, to another person or group. We can project both negative and positive characteristics, however. There is a greater tendency to project the former rather than the latter. Sigmund Freud, who popularized the term in the mid-1890s, believed projection to be a defense mechanism used to avoid the anxiety that is provoked when one is forced to face up to their faults, weaknesses, and destructive tendencies. Jung's view of projection was similar to Freud's, and as he explains in Archaic Man, projection is one of the commonest psychic phenomena. Everything that is unconscious in ourselves we discover in our neighbor, and we treat him accordingly. Jung, however, stressed that projection was both an inevitable and necessary component in our psychological development, as it is one of the primary means by which we can gain an awareness of elements residing in our unconscious. After projecting an element of our unconscious, the healthy thing to do is to recognize the subjective origin of the projection, to withdraw it from the external world, and to integrate this element of our personality into conscious awareness. Only by withdrawing our projections and becoming aware of the faults we previously projected onto others can we ever hope to take corrective measures. This process of withdrawal and integration is a difficult task, for it takes courage to face up to one's weaknesses and dark qualities. But while difficult, this task is crucial in the battle of life, for failure to confront one's shadow leaves these elements free to grow in scope and influence, as Jung explains.
Okay, I'm going to stop right here and kind of discuss the specifics of projection, and then we're going to play the rest of the tape in just a minute. But people have a style of defense. You remember taking the defense mechanism inventory?
No.
We took it years ago. People tend to either be the type to project or they tend to be the type to deny, kind of turning the defense mechanism inward or kind of turning it outward.
Okay, so we all have our weaknesses, and there's an internal propensity to either deny that you have a weakness or project the problem.
There's a propensity to defend against your weakness, and you defend it in a certain way. Each person has a kind of a favorite defense mechanism.
And I'm curious, when it comes to He talks about internalizing that. Is it an aha, or is it a gradual thing where you start saying, wait a minute, maybe I'm part of the problem?
It can be either.
Okay.
But the point is when you're, the everyday pathology is like when you can't find something you're looking for and you think immediately who moved it
Yeah.
rather than I moved it.
Yeah.
And when something goes wrong and you think somebody did that, that's projection.
Okay. I got that all the time.
Well, if you'll recall, your favorite is projection. You scored high on projection as your favorite defense mechanism.
Oh, okay.
I scored high on principalization and the medium on projection.
What's that mean?
That's a complicated defense mechanism that when I taught this to clients, I like to use the example from Young Frankenstein where Gene Wilder
It's Frederick Frankenstein.
says, this is nasty work. They're digging a grave. He and Igor are digging a grave.
No, it's pronounced Igor.
He says, this is nasty work. And Igor said, it could be worse. And Gene Wilder says, how could it be worse? He says, it could be raining. And of course, then it thunders and starts raining. It could be worse is a principalization.
Oh, I see. It could be worse.
It's like, I'm going to accept the truth of this reality, but I'm going to twist it and make it look a little more positive.
I see. It could be worse.
Could be worse. Looking at the bright side, looking at the cheerful side. That's a little bit of denial, but principalization is a term we use when it doesn't include denial.
I see.
It could be worse is actually true. It's a true statement.
I will say, in my old age, I am still quick to suspect other people moving.
You're getting worse.
But almost immediately, I always say, but 9 times out of 10, when I find out what's going on, 9 times out of 10, I'm the one that moved it. I mean, I do recognize.
Well, when you find out the truth.
Even before I recognize the truth, I know 9 times out of 10 I did it.
Well, you can pat yourself on the back if you want to. I'm not sure. I'm not sure you're
to.
that good at that.
I do want to.
But, let me just talk about projection a little bit more here. Projection is absolutely diabolical. When I used to work with couples and one of them was projecting and the other was like trapped in a do loop because you can't unconvince a person of projection that their projection is wrong. We can't convince a person who decided to bomb Tesla that Elon Musk is not a Nazi. Projection can be a minor problem where a person wakes up pretty well, pretty effectively, just from being confronted with facts, to projection that's almost the level of psychosis with paranoia, where you don't wake up, you just can't wake that person up. Then that person becomes really problematic as far as violence goes. And that's what I'm concerning, that, we get enough of these political leaders who are part of this herd mentality and they froth up these lunatics, and the lunatics go out and think they're doing good for the world by fighting these fights.
By doing violent stuff.
By doing violence.
And I want to point out that at this time in our nation's history, Donald Trump has just been elected president, and there's Trump derangement syndrome that everyone can easily see. So we tend to see that the left is deranged and the right is not deranged. But I would say, given different circumstances, the right can get deranged also. It's just hard to see right now because it's so in our face right now.
Yeah, the right won the election, and so they have less reason to be deranged.
Yeah.
But Hans Isaac found that both the right and the left were equally aggressive, but that the difference between the right and the left in aggression, now this isn't projection. Projection's a defense mechanism. Aggression is a motivation, more of a drive or motivation. But what he found was that the right was more directly aggressive and the left was more indirectly. And he differentiated between the right and the left by calling the left tender-minded and the right tough-minded.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that distinction between them.
Yeah.
But right now, I'd say that the left is the one that is more psychologically impaired. as a group.
Well, that business of the Black Lives Matter and having the picture on television of a car in the background on fire and having the commentator speak right into the camera and say this is a mostly peaceful.
Mostly peaceful riot. Now, mostly peaceful protest.
It's not a riot. It's a demonstration.
The mostly peaceful demonstration, and he's standing right in front of a burning car.
Right.
That was really priceless.
That was priceless.
That was really priceless. I'm going to play the rest of this tape, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about it.
Those who rely too heavily on projection to shield them from their shadow, who never strive to question whether the image they hold of themselves is perhaps too perfect, go through life forever in need of scapegoats or people on whom to blame all their problems. Often a friend or family member is chosen as one's scapegoat, but the problem with this choice is that it irreparably damages and in many cases forces an end to the relationship. After driving away one's scapegoat, it is usually discovered that one's problems persist nonetheless. This spurs some to look within and to face up to the elements of their personality they have for so long tried to deny. But rather than partaking in this internal reflection, most people merely look for another scapegoat. In this process, it is often discovered that the most effective form of scapegoat is not any individual in particular, but rather entire groups of people. This tendency of scapegoating to occur on a collective level can have dangerous consequences for a society. Those unwilling or unable to face up to their shadows are easy prey for collectivist movements which have ready-made scapegoats in the form of political opponents, members of different ethnic groups or socioeconomic classes. Scapegoating at the level of collectives, or in other words, projecting our problems onto groups of people who differ from us, proves attractive for several reasons. It allows us to avoid the damage to our personal relationships which occurs when we use someone close to us as a scapegoat. Furthermore, given that our interactions with members of the scapegoated group are usually limited, we do not risk awakening to the realization that these people are not nearly like the distorted image of them we hold in our psyche. Scapegoating at a group level is made easier by the fact that those in the scapegoated group, being composed of individuals with their own weaknesses and flaws, may in fact behave in ways that provide legitimate reasons for indignation, or as Jung put it, not that these others are wholly without blame, for even the worst projection is at least hung on a hook, perhaps a very small one, but still a hook offered by the other person. But as Jung recognized, there is a tendency within collectivist movements to take this small hook offered by one's opponents and to hang on it virtually all that is wrong with oneself in the world. When we cast a group of people in this negative light, seeing them as the primary source of all that ails a society, it becomes possible to justify persecution, violence, and perhaps even extermination of the group in question. Projection at the level of collectives becomes even more dangerous, as those in positions of power can divert attention away from their own activities and the harm they may be causing by using propaganda, false flags, and other manipulation techniques in order to cast blame onto ready-made scapegoats.
That's powerful stuff.
It really is, and it's something every citizen of the United States needs to embrace. Because it's unconscious, you never know you're doing it. So the only way you get information about doing it is if somebody points it out to you and you open your mind to the possibility. Now, I feel like I have had training in dealing with leftist people when dealing with psychologists, and they project. And some of them project seriously.
So you're not talking about clients anymore. You're talking about colleagues, other psychologists.
Yeah.
Who are treating each other in weird ways.
Well, to the degree that psychology has been captured by the political left, then I think I'm talking about the political left when I think of most psychologists. The psychologists that aren't members of the political left talk to me in secret. They don't talk to me outright. Right. But the political left, the ones that are members of the political left, they find it comfortable to make public statements.
If you don't mind, let me go through the 1, 2, 3 steps that he just described there.
Okay.
Is that we all have our flaws, and so this is about how you handle your own flaws.
The anxiety that revolves around your deficiencies.
So the nearest target for projecting your flaws is someone that you know, a friend or a relative, but that's an uncomfortable person to project your flaws to. So if you can't resolve it, then the next easiest thing to project to is a group. either a political group or a racial group or
Yeah.
another country. It just becomes easier and easier to project to another group as the source of the
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah.
And then the next step is that, I think he was saying this, political leaders, it is to their benefit to point at these other groups, at these racial or countries, other
Or
countries.
any way to discriminate between you and them. Now,
Well, I think what he said was these political leaders, they know that they're not perfect in the way they're managing the country. And rather than admit that they made a mistake in whatever laws they pass, they project the problem to some other country or some racial group.
well, yeah, that's one of the things that can happen.
Wow.
I kind of want to make sure that you understand and that the listeners understand the characteristic that you're defending against could be anything, but basically it's self-interest. It's unacceptable self-interest. That would be Freudian psychology would say that the id, it wants its way. You know, the id is the selfish aspect
It
of the
wants what it
person.
wants.
Wants what it wants. And it's going to use a defense mechanism to cover it up if it's unacceptable. If it's unfair, unacceptable, if you're trying to cheat, you're going to want to defend against that knowledge coming out.
Wow.
So that's why the defense mechanisms exist, according to Freud.
Wow.
So at the basic thing, I thought the Jungian way of looking at it is like the person is covering up their own anxiety about it. But we really have to extend that and say that the person is covering up their own cheating. So what we've got is a continuum of projective defense mechanism. You can see the two political groups projecting to each other, but the derangement syndrome is a level above where you complain about a normal person. I wouldn't say Elon Musk is a normal person, but he's a normal person as far as projecting to him. He's not a bad guy. Trump is not a bad guy. Pete Hegseth is not a bad guy. Tulsi Gabbard is not a bad woman. These are normal people. They aren't Hitler. They aren't involved in a world-class problem where they have executed a bunch of people. And so we know that the projection is irrational. Wanting to assassinate someone is irrational. So we could talk about what are we going to do about this?
I can't help but get off the topic and say that the libertarian principle of private property nonviolence kind of deals with this problem, because you got this problem and the libertarians are saying, okay, you got a problem, but you can't steal from anybody and you can't use violence. So maybe that helps handle the problem if you can just stick with the libertarian principle.
Just no criminal behavior.
Right. As soon as you turn toward theft or violence, then you have to be stopped.
Well, I guess they're trying to do that. But my thought is, how do you reach people and let them know they've gone crazy?
Well,
I had that bizarre idea the other day that what we need is AOC and Trump to get together and make a series of public service announcements. Tone down the rhetoric, calm down. We're not your enemy. We're your political diversity. Something that would address the mental health of the country.
When people were calling Trump a Nazi and Hitler, that was a legitimate point in time where the left and the right should have gotten together and said, okay, people, we need to calm down on this. We don't need to be doing this name calling with no basis in fact. We need to calm this down because it is very close to a call for violence.
Yeah. So that idea has merit about getting them together.
I think so.
The idea that both sides of the political spectrum, the tender-minded people, they have a point. The tough-minded people, they have a point. RFK Jr. was the best one about talking. Of course, it was a great example of the deficiency on the side of the left to be able to be open-minded. I don't know if it's because they're losing that makes them unable to process new information. My interaction with psychologists has left me very negative on the left, because I just don't think they let their logic rule. I think they let their feelings rule.
So what did
But
RFK Jr. say?
RFK was in an interview before Congress. This was years ago now, maybe a year or 2 years ago. He was addressing something about vaccines, I think. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz was just a lunatic as far as confronting him. And it was very ironic. He said, we've got to have a discussion. We've got to listen to each other. We've got to respect each other enough to consider that there are facts we might not know. And she turns right around and blasts him for what had to be just crazy notions. I mean, she just was blithering idiot as far as I could tell. But he pleaded for open-minded rationality, and she turns around and gives him a load of batshit nutty crap. And I thought, this is hopeless.
Yeah.
And she's doing something in front of everybody. I mean, it's one thing to be batshit crazy by yourself and with your close friends. It's another thing to be batshit crazy on C-SPAN.
But I do want to point out that on your trait of, hey, everybody, let's kind of get together, calm down, and let's discuss this issue. RFK Jr. is the best. He's better than
He's
anybody.
very good.
He's better than anybody else on the right or on the left. He raises a question and says, there is a reason for us to be questioning this, and we need to look into it.
Yeah.
And then he has people on the left who go crazy saying, you're not a doctor, you can't be making these statements. And he gets people on the right who just want to accept everything he says as the complete truth.
Gospel.
But what he's really saying is, hey, we have a legitimate reason to be questioning this, and we need to get together on it. He's the best.
Yeah. Well, he really is quite extraordinary in that regard. So to wrap up, the point today is this psychological effect of projection is a serious issue right now. I don't know what we're going to do about it, but we do need a treatment plan for the country. The mental health of the country is only being addressed indirectly, but the mental health of the country could be better if people understand these psychological mechanisms that lead us down these paths. You're going to always have nutty people, but you don't have to have so many that you have all the Tesla dealerships having to hire security for kooks. I mean, just attacking a car.
Good.
The car didn't hurt anybody.
That's good.